All right, welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the Chamber Podcast. My name is Rob Johnson. We have a really interesting, really exciting show for you today. So joining me in the studio is Kyle Hunt from Remodelers on the Rise. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
It's going to be interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
I think so. I think it's going to be very interesting. And one thing that I'm curious about for you is you're not in the podcast host chair today. You are in the interview chair.
I'm already uncomfortable.
How does that feel?
I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm usually the one running the show. I know what questions are coming. This is unusual.
And also what's unusual about this is not your first podcast, like many of the business owners that I've had in here. So you've done one or two.
Yes. Yeah. So I've done a lot. And then I met you a couple months ago when I had one of my clients come in and we did a live recording, and it was an awesome experience.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. That was a lot of fun. I had the opportunity to be the engineer on that one, which is a rare day for me. So and hopefully I didn't screw it up too bad. So Kyle, I want to talk about Remodelers on the Rise, and I want to get into your backstory. So just in an elevator pitch sort of fashion, what got you from kind of working for someone else to working for yourself, and then give us a high-level overview of your business.
Yeah. So if I went way back, and I'll give a kind of a Cliff Notes version, growing up, buying and selling baseball cards, big Alan Trammell fan.
Okay.
So in high school, when the internet was popping and I took a website design class, I realized, I could set up a website and sell baseball cards online. I started kind of a little e-commerce thing called MajorLeagueCards.com. That parlayed into doing some website hosting. That parlayed into just some side hustles. So I've always kind of been entrepreneurial from the get-go. And when I went to college, I did a little college painter thing. That would be my only foray into anything construction related. My clients sometimes confuse me with someone who actually knows how to swing the hammer. I work with remodelers. I am a business coach for remodelers, but I don't have any skills as far as doing the work.
Yeah,
I can paint a little bit,
sure,
but that's about it. And in college, I ended up kind of in that entrepreneurial vein. I had a set of spreadsheets that I made for my baseball coach in high school. And I said, you know what? These spreadsheets are pretty snazzy. You can track the team statistics, and I'm going to create a letter. I'm going to send it out to all of the high schools in Michigan and see if I can, sell a few $100s, take my then girlfriend, now wife, out to dinner. And I sent it out, and one of the guys that bought it, his name's Jim Long, and Jim owns Long Kitchen and Bath Design in Northville, Michigan. He was the assistant softball coach for Northville High School at the time.
Okay.
And he had a question about the statistics. I had gone to Western Michigan University, was kind of in my senior year, not really sure what I was going to do upon graduation. And Jim said, "Oh, you go to Western. We're looking to create a position in our business. I wonder if they're teaching this at college." And he's going through what they're looking to hire. And I said, "Bud, you're talking about me here, somebody that does websites, marketing. I think we should sit down and talk." So we played a round of golf and agreed to a starting salary. And that's kind of how I started. So I got into the kitchen, bath, remodeling, plumbing, heating, and cooling kind of through some entrepreneurial ventures. I kind of viewed it as a little providential how it all came together. Okay. And then I worked for him for 3 or 4 years, and kind of that entrepreneurial itch started hitting again. And I said to my wife, Sarah, I said, "Honey, you're a stay-at-home mama. We got one kid, another one on the way. It's a crappy economy here in Michigan." It was 2008.
Yeah.
No money in the bank to fall back on, and I want to quit my job and start my own business.
Yeah. What a well-rounded, perfectly timed idea.
Yes, and of course she said, "That sounds wonderful, honey."
Yeah.
But I did that, and I basically took my former employer and turned them into my first client, and kind of weaned off of them, going from 5 days a week to 3 to 2 to 1, and kind of started up my coaching business.
So what was that like? So I imagine for me, like if I had one of my people that were like, "Hey, Rob, I'm going to go and start my own company, and I'd like you to be my first client," like I would listen. Mm-hmm. And it'd be interesting, and it'd be a fun story to tell. What was that transition like, though? Because one of the things I would assume would be the biggest thing would be the time expectation. Mm-hmm. There's a difference when you're a consultant in 40 hours of employee hours and 40 hours of mental hours that you've already done from long ago to put into that position.
Yeah. I think it started with just kind of one, having a boss that kind of understood who I was and that I was kind of entrepreneurial. Yeah. And I remember the conversation pretty vividly of kind of shaking a little bit and like being concerned of like how this is going to go. Because by that point I had like made up my mind, I'm going to do this and I want to give it a shot. One of my buddies and mentors, I remember that kind of really pushed me to do it, was he was basically saying, you know, Kyle, the longer you wait to start your own thing, the harder it's going to be. Yeah. And I remember that. Shout out to Jeff McCauley. And I remember that vividly. And I was like, you know what? It's true. We got another baby coming. The bills are going to keep getting bigger. It's going to be more risky for me to do this. Sure. And I remember sitting down with Jim Long and Don Luke and saying, guys, I got a proposal for you. I think it can work. I think I can still serve you guys. And I think they just heard my passion for it and they cared about me, right? So I had bosses that saw the effort that I've been putting into them for years and just said, let's give it a shot. And then kind of went from there.
Yeah. One thing I appreciate about you, Kyle, is you have a very transparent nature about you, even online with your company. And that's something I really enjoy seeing, especially in marketing companies, because I don't feel like there's enough of that out there. What was it like, and what was the difficulty level for people that are thinking about starting off on their own? What's it like to get out there and get your own business up and running, going from W-2 land to, oh, everything is now my responsibility land?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, super easy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I tell people all the time, you set your own hours.
Yeah. You set your own hours. You don't have a boss anymore.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of things I would say. One, you know, I think I was making like 40,000 or so at my gig back then, you know, so not having to replace like a 6-figure salary, that plays a big factor in getting something up and going.
That's nice.
You know, I think the biggest thing that, you know, in my case, how old was I? You know, I was pretty young. I was 25 years old when I did it. So there was a lot of young naiveness that I had going for me, because I remember a couple years into it thinking back and saying, boy, if I knew what I knew now, would I have actually done that? And that what I knew now was, crap, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Right. I had never worked as hard, had as much stress on my shoulders. It was a lot of work. Absolutely. You know, at the same time, the feeling of signing a new client, the feeling of kind of creating something from scratch and starting to build something fueled me. I loved it. You know, a little bit of that tightrope act of going, oh crap, I got $2,000 to sell. It's the 25th of the month. How am I going to do this? Yes, that stress was very real. Yeah. At the same time, I could kind of see piece by piece, brick by brick, it coming together. And so as far as advice for somebody that's thinking about it, one, are you ready for it? Are you truly an entrepreneur? Are you really having your eyes open to the reality that this is going to be a stinking lot of work?
Yeah.
And then, you know, number two, if you are, you know, being patient, realizing building anything worthwhile takes time and it takes longer than you anticipate, and continuing to just, you know, brick by brick, day by day, working at it.
Yeah. In that, I feel.
Do you think that fired some people up to quit their job and start their own business?
I hope not. I mean, hope it. If anything, I hope it deters people from doing it, because there's people, I think you and I would agree, that are running businesses that don't have any business in doing that. And so, as much education as we can bring to people to explain to them the difficulty level of it, it's not to say don't do it. It's just to consider all of the things. Yeah. And I loved your second point of be patient, because it takes time. One trap I wonder if you had thought about, or maybe even fell into, is when you started, was your core focus always remodelers?
Not quite, no.
Okay, because I feel like one of the biggest problems in business is the allure of everything. And if this isn't working, pivoting to something else too quickly before actually staying in this lane. So being that you are now a specialist in home remodeling, on the marketing side, going from a generalist to a specialist, that can be difficult, because now you're narrowing who can be a player for you, who can be a client. Yeah.
So I'd say the two best decisions I made in business was, one, shortly after I started my business, probably a year and a half or 2 years, I met a guy named Dov Gordon. Jewish man who lives over in Israel, and I got connected through this or that. And I didn't really have the dollars to hire him as a business coach, but I scrounged it together and did it. And he was instrumental in saying, you can't be all things to all people. Listen to the advice you're giving to clients, Kyle. Take some of your own advice. You got to narrow your focus down and not be all things to all people. You know, and the second best business decision I made was really putting my flag in the ground and taking that advice and saying, my name's Kyle. I run this business and I just work with remodelers. Once I made that decision, not that I turned it off right away. If somebody outside the remodeling world kind of reached out, I was still entertaining that, right? Because there's bills to pay and there's business to be had. But I started moving in that direction piece by piece. And immediately when you make a strategic decision to be more of a specialist, your whole strategy and your mindset can shift. Right. Now I'm looking at different home builder associations around the state. There's 24 at the time home builder associations around the state of Michigan. Hey, my name's Kyle. I've got 7 steps to marketing success. Can I come in and speak to your group? Pick up a client, do it again, pick up another client, do it again, pick up another client, and just kind of piece by piece, step by step moving into it. That idea of just in general, for people in general, that idea, like you were saying, of being all things to all people, of having your net spread wide, you've got to think really hard about that. I would say it is riskier, especially in today's business environment, it's riskier to try to be all things to all people than narrowing your focus down to serving a very specific ideal client. In my case, I narrowed it down to saying, okay, there's 100 businesses that could use my services. I literally want these 2 at this point. I just want home remodelers that are doing kitchens, baths, additions. And by doing that, I have become a specialist in it. I've gone very deep into a narrow niche. Do you say niche or niche?
I say niche, but it's up to you.
You're fancy, huh?
Is that what it is?
Niche. Yeah. I mean, us Midwesterners say niche, not niche.
Yeah. As long as we don't say niche, like when I hear someone say that, like I'm like, all right, then we can't be friends.
Yeah, it's all messed up. So niche, but narrowing it down to the niche and going very deep. It's kind of like if heaven forbid, one of my kids had an issue with their heart. Am I taking them to just a general doctor, or am I taking them to a heart specialist? And when you think about your business, the more specialized you can make it, the more the more valuable you are in the eyes of your ideal client. So there's a lot of strategy to think about there.
Oh, absolutely. And that I would imagine that would drive a lot of fear in people as well, is going so narrow and saying, well, now I've ran the gamut of clients. But as you said, you start to think about all the different ways you can pitch and be in front of different people. How do you handle it if you have? So I imagine low volume, high dollar clients would be the area you want to move into. How do you handle it if there's people in the same competitive region? Do you just have a non-compete per region?
For my business?
For yourself, yeah.
So I, most all my clients are kind of around the country at this point, and some of my early guys. So Brett Olexon came with Oddfellows Contracting. He was the one I interviewed here at this beautiful studio.
Yeah, a great interview.
Have people been in here before?
Yes. Yeah, once or twice.
If people are walking by downtown Brighton and they see, should they just walk in and say hi?
Absolutely, they should.
If they are a business and they are thinking, man, I need to create some content and I should create some podcasts, they should reach out to you, shouldn't they?
That would be nice.
Okay, don't be shy, people. They're very friendly in here. There was some candy. You offered me bourbon.
I did.
It's just water in here, though.
For today.
It's a Monday at 12:30.
Yeah, that's way too late.
Plus, bourbon is terrible. It doesn't taste good.
To you.
Okay. Maybe I haven't tasted it correctly.
Yeah. You gotta do a taste with me. We'll do a few different pours.
Okay.
I'll walk you through the profiles. It'll be good.
But as I was saying before I gave you a commercial, Brett Olexon. So in Brett's case, I said, hey, I'm only going to work with 2 remodelers in the greater Lansing area. And then once I work with those 2, I'm kind of lock it out. So I've worked with Brett and with Bill Tanasso with Key Builders in Lansing for years and years. And so I made that kind of promise early to them. And there's a couple, like Grand Rapids is also similar. But, after those 2, I kind of stopped making that promise of just saying, I'm only going to work with 2. At the same time, if I'm working pretty closely with clients, I'll just kind of make it as a point of not wanting to work with too many of similar trade area.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, I love that. And then one thing that stuck out to me as we were doing the pre-interview and even when I was engineering your last show was you have a really big focus on not over delivering, but just delivering so much value that it just makes sense. Mm-hmm. And that's to me how the philosophy of how you've grown your business so quickly is you've thought a lot about how you can be of most value to people, rather than trying to flip the script and say, okay, how can they give me the most things? And that's when you have that selfless attitude, I think that, that does nothing but enable your growth.
Can I comment on that?
Of course.
So you mentioned, jab, 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 right hook.
Yeah.
I was talking about that. And there's a guy named Gary V. I don't know if we personally recommend him. He cusses a lot. He's a little obnoxious sometimes.
Small doses.
Yeah, small doses. But he's got a few philosophies like that of give, and then ask.
Yeah.
Or he's got another one of like 51-49. In every interaction you have with somebody, give more than you receive. I view marketing as building know, like, and trust. And what I have found, it was interesting because you said you've been able to grow your business so fast. Yeah. I would argue that it hasn't really been that fast. Yeah. I've been at it for 14 years, and I would say there was numerous years there where it was growing. It's been pretty much growth every year, but it was pretty kind of slow and steady. I've very much taken kind of a tortoise approach to it.
Okay.
And the way that I've really zeroed in on the marketing is taking that long-term approach. And yes, the more you give, just give your best stuff, which sounds so weird. Yeah. Get on a podcast, create content that's literally giving away what people pay you for in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Give away your best stuff. And what I have found is the more I give, the more good advice I give, the more ideas I give, the more templates, tools, resources, the more I give, the more it comes back.
Right.
And when people reach out, they're like, I've been listening to your podcast for years, or I've implemented this and this, and I think I'm ready for coaching. That's just beautiful marketing. It's fun marketing. Yeah. I love building a business in a way that even if somebody has never, a remodeler in random town, Iowa, who I've never met before, has received value and actually implemented something in his business as a result of my content, I love that just as much as the person that reaches out and pays me for coaching. And that type of mentality of that long-term focus, I think, is something that a lot of business owners can be thinking about, especially in today's busy world of business.
Yeah, and to your point, when you talk about growth, one thing in the pre-notes that came through was just talking about you wishing that you onboarded team members faster. And is that because you wanted to put in some decentralized command? You wanted to put people in the right spaces so it didn't all fall back on you? Go into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think for what happened for me was the personal income, just the family income needed to increase. The kids kept popping out. We have 4. So we needed to increase kind of our own personal income. But what I realized is once we hit a certain area of that, what I should have done is been more disciplined to reinvest it into the business. Gotcha. Right. So those years where I was growing, that was on the sheer just work ethic and hustle. Right, a factor. Okay, I'm gonna maybe start charging some more, et cetera, but just hustle. And if I would have been a little more disciplined and said, okay, I'm gonna take this $20,000 this year and I'm going to invest it in a part-time assistant, I would have been able to grow most likely quicker than I did now. Now, when I was typing that up this morning, I was talking to my employee Bailey, and we were on Zoom, and I said, I need to type up a few notes, and she said, well, Kyle, if you would have done that earlier, you wouldn't have hired me. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise, which probably is the case. But I think a lot of times as business owners, we need to be careful not to drain the business of all of its potential for growth. We need to be disciplined and say, okay, I've got X amount coming for my own personal needs and personal budget, and I need to reinvest these dollars into my business so that it has a stronger foundation and can grow.
Yeah, it's huge. If you're not constantly reinvesting into the business, it's going to just flatline and stay either steady or dip a little bit. And that was one thing I realized early on was you have to have the right people, because I can't answer the phone all day. If we got 50, 60 clients, I can't talk to 50, 60 people a day. Yeah. Even in that month-long period, you can't do it.
The other way I like to phrase it is there's $10 an hour work, $100 an hour work, and $1,000 work. Yeah. And if you're the business owner and you're finding yourself, not that you're above doing the $10 an hour work, but there's only so much time in the day. Yep. And you as a leader of your business need to be focusing more of your time on $100 work and $1,000 work, your most valuable work you can be doing. Yep. And a lot of times when we're not reinvesting in people and team or getting creative with virtual assistants or figuring out how we can delegate work, we end up spending too much time on $10 work at the expense of not doing more valuable work, which hurts your business overall.
I love that. I wonder if business owners partitioned their day in those 3 buckets where their time would fall, and if that would be, or give them a sense of urgency to act and flip that, because it's so true.
It's eye-opening, right?
It's huge.
It's what gets measured gets improved. And if you're paying attention to that, I mean, it's an exercise that I give to clients who are like, I'm constantly doing little things. I'm going to buy materials. I'm going to do this. I got to deliver this to the job site. Just track for a week, maybe 2. I know it's obnoxiously tedious, but just track.
Yeah.
And write down what you do each day, and then put $10, $100, $1,000 next to it. And a lot of times when they do that exercise, it's eye-opening. Yeah. And you realize, wow, I'm spending too much time on these low-dollar things. That's why I'm so stressed and I got too much on my plate.
Is that a homegrown concept?
Well, as the good book says, there's nothing new under the sun. It says in the good book, Ecclesiastes. But the 10, 100, and 1,000 actually comes from a guy named Perry Marshall.
Okay.
A guy that I've followed for years. He's a business coach in the Chicago area. And I remember him kind of teaching on that.
I love that.
And I've embraced that over the years.
I love that.
I don't think there's anything that comes out of the mouth that's truly homegrown.
No, everything is generally just repackaged and articulated well. That's generally how all of us consultants float about. So, so talk to me a little bit about numbers. So when we look at pricing and encouraging people to put their pricing online, or encouraging people to charge more as they level up in their business, that's been something that I found some business owners push back on, because they want to either be the lowest, they want to have the most value, but value doesn't always come across to just the cheapest. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd say, related to my business, I have some coaching buddies of mine and colleagues of mine that over the years have been like, you're only charging that and you're doing that. I've got another guy right now that I've been networking with, and I realized, he's making twice as much as me and working half as much. Yeah. And it makes me kind of, scratch my head a little bit and think, which is good to see somebody that's doing that. At the same time, we all wrestle, and I wrestle with wanting it to be, a great ROI, a great return on investment for my clients. I'm a bit obsessed with that. I want for every dollar they invest in me, for them to be making multiple dollars back.
Sure.
So there's always going to be a little friction in what we charge. With that said, in order to grow your business, in order to invest in your business, and I guess this is advice I'm constantly giving to my clients, you don't charge enough. But Kyle, my market cannot, stop. You don't charge enough. People undervalue the value they deliver. I think I do it. People pay me a certain amount. When you think over the years of how I can help somebody understand their numbers better, improve their profitability, their job costing, improve their sales process, which saves them time, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars early, let alone year after year when you improve things.
Right.
So knowing your numbers, one, you just have to know your value, know what you bring to the table. And more times than not, we have that voice in our head that says, you can't charge more. Stop charging more. You're already charging too much. And a lot of times that's not true. What I'm running up against right now, which is kind of interesting, is I love to work with remodelers who are a little earlier in the process.
Okay.
I love to work with, I work with a lot of husband-wife teams, those people that they figured out how to get themselves out of the field and off the tools, but don't really have a big team around them. The reason I love working with them is I can make a huge impact.
Sure.
Okay. The problem is if I charge, like a couple of my friends I was just mentioning, double or triple what maybe I charge now, they're not going to be able to afford me. Now there's bigger remodelers who could afford that. I don't like working with them as much. So in every business, because there's just not as much impact, there's not as much, wow, you implemented that, and literally it kind of...
Yeah, the trail's already been blazed.
Yeah, it already improved. That shifted your life. Like I'm thinking of Stu Kavner of like, I taught him how to not take evening appointments, even though he thought that was impossible, and his marriage improved, and his ability to be a dad improved because he was protecting his time. Like that gets me fired up.
Sure.
So it's interesting because we also have to evaluate, yes, what we charge and who our ideal client is and what that attracts. So it's an ongoing process. It's a lot of head trash. It's a lot of working through it. Oh, yeah. And at the end of the day, I would summarize it of you need to charge more. You, me, and probably how many millions of people are listening to this?
Couple million.
Okay. And the 2 million people listening to this, charge more.
Absolutely. And where do you, just to dive into that a little bit deeper, because I think it's really important, because I talk about pricing all the time, and we consistently raise our rates as we bring more value to the table. And I feel as though there's a very certain reason as to why we tell ourselves that we can't charge more. What would you say the main reason that people have that feeling is?
Why don't you answer that first, and I'll give the answer. You already have something in mind. What's your answer?
I do. I think a lot of people just don't have a lot of self-value. I think a lot of it comes from just a lack of confidence in what they're selling. And that's why I think if you're a business owner and you can't articulate what you do and why you do it, and you can't sell what you're doing, probably not in the right game. So a lot of it for me is like, if I look a client in the face and say, hey, this is going to be a $10,000 consult, and I don't have any problem saying that because I know what the value is going to be. You articulated it beautifully a minute ago when you said, not only is there value up front, but that whatever you teach them on the remodeling side to help them blaze that trail is going to help them in every single deal that they negotiate on every single job. So even if 2% of every job goes back to your advice, they're making a hell of a lot more money than that.
Over 10 years.
Yeah, because that is a foundational element that you've given them for that business.
So I would answer it of, if you look the same, talk the same, and act the same as your competitors, how am I going to decide between you and option B? And the answer is price. If you look, talk, and act the same, I'm going with the cheapest price.
Right.
So if I'm a business owner and I want to charge more, I also need to increase the value of what I'm offering.
Right.
And, I'm thinking of like chamber members. I'm thinking of the people listening to this. I'm thinking of insurance companies. I'm thinking of financial advisors. I'm thinking of accountants. I'm thinking of the boutique businesses downtown, the clothing stores that I could go into. I could go on Amazon and buy this cheaper. I could do this. I could do that. I could go get a meal cheaper. The people that are listening to this, the way that if you need to charge more because your costs are going up, rent is going up, you want to make a better living, you need to increase the value.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to focus on. And the more you increase the value, the more you can justify and feel good. Like you said, it's confidence. 90% of what you charge has to do with what's going on between your ears and your confidence. Now, I said 90%, but Rob, 42% of all statistics are made up.
That's absolutely true.
Right? But I'm pretty sure it's about 90%.
Yep, I like it. Let's roll with
that. It's mental. It's so mental. It's mental for me. It's mental for all of us. But when we know, man, I'm working my face off. I'm building a business. I deliver tremendous value. Doggone it, I'm worth every penny of this.
Yeah.
Once we start thinking that way, and making sure that the value we're delivering is actually delivering it. It's cute that you store owner downtown says, well, we have wonderful service. But if I'm walking in and I kind of got crummy service and you didn't actually, wow me with it, and I literally could have saved a ton of time and just done it here, there, or online, you're at a competitive disadvantage. Like, you really need to wow people. You really need to stand out and be different. And that's where you build up the confidence to say, we are different. And yes, we charge this amount.
Yeah. There's a lot of contractors or people that are in the bulk service area. I'm thinking of, realtors, insurance agents, and it's difficult to differentiate because there's so many in that space. And I've met with some before and they've said, well, we're all pretty much the same. And it's like, well, no, everyone can develop an X factor no matter how saturated your business is. And the ones that do that are going to be the ones that stand out. But it's your job to figure out how to differentiate, and it can't be on price.
Yeah.
Price can't be what makes people choose.
Yeah,
at least it shouldn't be.
That's where you get into specialties.
Right.
And niches or niches. And yes, if that's coming out of your mouth, you've got some strategy work to do. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like this, wow, I've never thought of that idea. A lot of your competitors wouldn't be talking about benefit 1, 2, and 3. And you call it, some of my clients, they end up creating kind of a list of what makes us different. And they call it their 5-point pledge, their 4-way guarantee, their 4-point promise. Now they've taken some points of difference. They've named it. They've written it up. They can hand it to clients. Yeah. It's not necessarily drastically different than maybe what some of their competitors are doing, but it's got a name and it stands out and it's different and it's more memorable and it pops. Yeah. It shows how different you are compared to some other people they might be talking to. So if you're like, yeah, we're pretty much the same, stop saying that, number one, and get to work on how you can make sure that you're not selling soybeans, straight up commodity. Right. If you're in real estate, if you're in insurance land, et cetera, there are ways to differentiate yourself.
Yeah. And if you are selling soybeans, make a 4-point promise. You know,
you go.
ours are delivered with electric vehicles, you know, I don't know, whatever,
there we go.
something fancy.
Yeah. I just thought of commodity.
No,
right?
no,
Like
you're absolutely,
stereotypical.
you're absolutely right. Yeah, of course. All wheat's the same.
What do we make?
Allegedly.
What do we make out of soybeans? I don't even really know much about soybeans.
I have no idea. I've never even eaten soybeans. I'm pretty certain. Maybe I have.
Grant, what do you know about soybeans in there, engineer man?
I can hear you in my ear.
They go into basically everything.
They go into basically everything.
Yeah.
So
That's your scientific review from the control room.
very good. So that is your weekly update from Grant.
Thank you.
They go into everything.
He's smarter than us.
So this iPad sitting in front of me, there's probably soybeans sitting in it.
He's obviously smart. You gonna give him a raise?
Probably not. Sorry, Grant.
No worries.
No, totally. Grant's our main man in the studio here. He's our one of our newest additions, but he's crushing it. So
Excellent.
I like Grant. I think everyone else does too.
Yeah, that is one thing that I think is important, especially in this day and age of a lot of business owners listening to this have employees, and the need to sit down one-on-one with them, the need to make sure that they're feeling supported, that they feel like they've got kind of some future growth opportunities with the business. I think business is very busy right now, and it's always, whether it's 2022 or 2032 or 2042, having personal time, one-on-one time with your team members and making sure they're feeling supported, encouraged, motivated is a huge part of what it means to be a good business owner and leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give one more add on to that is anytime I onboard a new person, I'll tell them, hey, you might get 8 months in and you might say, hey, I really want to go do this. Tell me, and I will help you go do it. Even if it's not with me, if it doesn't give me any benefit at all, because you being happy with what you're doing, I've been at jobs where I hate it and I wasn't happy. And had I have had a push to say, hey, I want to go and do this, I'll be on your team. I'll help you get it done.
Yeah.
It's just important.
And that's what Jim Long did for me when I started my gig.
Exactly right. Yeah. And it just has a tremendous amount of mutual benefit when you do that, because I want to take good care of my people. I want them to take good care of our clients and also just themselves as well. Yeah. So it's huge. Employee service, super undervalued.
Yep. No doubt.
So Kyle, as we move to wrap up here, what are a few things that you would like people to go and check out? You have a lot of content online. Your podcast is tremendous. We'll make sure we link all of that stuff up in the show notes. But what are a couple of pieces that you'd like people to review of some things that you've put together?
Well, most people watching this are not my ideal client, right? So there's a little bit of a challenge there, but
I think though that they can get value from the things that you've talked about, because a lot of the things that you do talk about, even in the remodeling industry, do have some cross-pollination benefits for sure.
So I'd say the people listening to this should find my podcast, Remodelers on the Rise, and kind of see the strategy. Give me a little 5-star review on Apple or wherever. That would be wonderful. So they could do that. If they just go to remodelersontherise.com, I think it'd be interesting, especially if you're somebody listening to this that is in kind of some coaching world. If you take a look at my website, you'll see recently I took some professional photos, had a little photo shoot over at the Brighton Lighthouse. And I think what you'll see on my website is very heavy on free content. There's the podcast, there's free articles, there's my free Facebook group. And you kind of notice, he's not talking a lot. It's there as far as first steps, as far as if somebody wanted to do business with me, but you're seeing it very heavily focused on value. So it might be interesting to take a peek at that. And if you know somebody, or if you are a bath and kitchen remodeler, certainly reach out and I can point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. Well, Kyle, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I bet you. Thanks for having me.
We'll make sure everything pops up in the show notes. All right, friends, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Chamber Podcast. I appreciate you all watching. If you can do me a favor, drop a review on Apple and Spotify if you'd be so kind. And we will catch you on next week's show. Thanks so much.